Okay, so where are we here? So Lindsay asks, what is the mind? I was watching my 9-year-old tell a story whilst looking at himself in the mirror and realised that my little guy saw himself as so big in the mirror. It struck me in such an impactful way. It made me think, I see every single thing as filtered by my mind, and how could I ever see anything completely as it actually is without the veil of my conditioning? So that's an interesting one. So I initially experienced mind as an internal thing here in and as me, discrete, inside my head maybe, separate from the external world or separate from the rest of experience. That's how I experienced what I would have referred to at that point in time as mind. Personal mind, separate or limited mind, discrete or internal mind, owned by me, basically forming the basis of my experience of myself as being this mind, let's say, inside this body. And then after some investigation, after looking at that assumption of the assumed way in which I was experiencing my mind or myself, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the assumption from which I was living as my reality. So then the experience of mind became something not confined to the limits, the imagined limits of separation or individual identity. So then you could maybe describe mind as being the totality of experience. And that gets very obvious. It gets like stupidly obvious, because even when you look at it from like an analytical or pragmatic point of view, so like you could say, you could assume that my mind is in here and all of this is appearing in my mind, or at least filtered through the perceptual faculty of my mind. So then where does my mind stop and the external world start? If these images are appearing or rendered by my mind, then are they in there or are they out there? Like where is that? Where is that? So you see the assumptions become really, really flimsy in the face of direct experience. And that's why I say, and people get annoyed at me for this, or have done, that it's obvious. It's so obvious. Like this whole realisation thing, like I said in one of the videos, you make a thing of it and then the realisation becomes the thing. That's not the thing. The realisation, the awakening, isn't the thing. That's nothing. That's just noticing something. That's all it is. It's just simply noticing something. It's not this big fantastic mad thing in the future, although there can be experiences that are quite bizarre or intense or like shake the foundations of your experience of reality. But what's profound about it is what's actually here. What's profound about it is reality itself, life itself. That's the crazy thing. That's the wild part about it. is just what's always been here and what always is here anyway, inherently. Not as something you get as a realisation or attainment in a personal way. Just what's here anyway. That's the big misconception. That's the thing that ends up being a seeking journey, or whatever you'd like to call it. But yeah, you could say all is mind, or I've heard people describe it like Rupert Spira describes it as God's mind as a description. God's mind is your mind, is not separate. All of this is appearing as one mind, you could describe it as. So then mind kind of loses meaning, doesn't it? When there's no separation, when there's no distinct thing that you can point to and say that's mind. So then it becomes kind of pointless. But it's a good question though. I think so. Your question is pointing to what I always refer to as the augmentation thought. Augments itself and kind of integrates itself in and onto the senses to make it look like something that you can relate to from a separate position. What's actually, that you could say, for want of a better phrase, happening here, which you're never going to be able to describe or figure out because of the paradoxical nature of it from the point of view of mind. But what's actually going on here has nothing to do with that at the ultimate level. So what tends to... So I'll describe my own experience. Before I experienced an external world with tons of objects, dimensions, separate objects with their own separate inherent existence, separate from other things, at a distance from me, this entity here with its own inherent, actually existing separate existence, apart from the rest of the world, as the seer, the hearer, the one who can discern and identify these objects. But upon investigation, it turns out that is an augmented interpretation of reality, augmented onto the sense perceptions through a function of mind, which, by the way, never stops, of course, because you need it to function. So I can point to red car over there, and I always use a red car, don't I? And say there's a red car. Completely reasonable, functional use of that augmentation. I can say that it's over there, and it is other than what I am. It's separate from me as a function of thought, right? Is that the experience directly? No, it's not. The experience directly isn't that there is a separate thing over there called a car that's separate from me, the distinct entity over here observing it at a distance. That's just not what's happening, and it's very clear and it's very obvious that is not what's happening. I can't describe to you what that is, but if you look at anything in your own experience now, you're seeing the exact same thing as what I'm seeing. I wouldn't describe it that I'm seeing it other than a thought, but I don't believe that thought isn't the foundation, the most real foundation of reality anymore. There's something more real than that, something more immediate than that, and something not dependent on that thought augmentation as the more primary fundamental experience of reality. such that you can't even really call it reality. And that experience that is, if I was to try and describe it, that there aren't things, there isn't a solid world out there separate from an actually existing me here, including the appearance of the body within this. I could say that there's one sense appearing seamlessly in a timeless way, experienced, let's say, not by something separate from it, but experienced by itself, without separation, without distinction. It's paradoxical from the point of view of the mind or language, but in experience it's not paradoxical, it's obvious to itself. It is completely natural. Such that there aren't limits to this, there aren't dimensions to this, there isn't a timeline to this. It appears in such a I could just go into I could go into a bunch of paradoxical statements to try and describe this, but you just can't describe it. But you can point to what's not actually here, what is actually a thought, and that is the assumption of separation, the assumption of distance, the assumption of time, the assumption of any point of view, any background, any position, any subject separate from any object. It just simply doesn't exist in direct experience. You have to reference thought to and then identify with it, believe in it, to experience that as a real, solid, fundamental reality. And there's no problem in it. There's I know what people talk about when they describe bliss, but the fabric of this, the fundamental quality of this is something that you can't quite describe. People describe it as love, bliss, peace, okayness. And you could use plenty of words to describe it, but or joy. But I could just say there's no problem in it. It's perfectly neutral. It's perfectly peaceful. It's perfectly okay. And when that becomes your primary and fundamental experience of life, then this can move in any way it does, and it's always fundamentally okay. Anyway, that'll do for now. Hopefully that answers the question. I'll talk to you next time.